Welcome to Good Afternoon, Ghana. I'm Francisca Kakra Forson. The World Health Organization reports that every year, close to 800,000 people die from suicide. Many more attempt suicide. The attempt of suicide, however, has been established to be associated with mental health disorders, and health experts around the world, including the World Health Organization, describe it so. In fact, a number of countries have decriminalized attempted suicide by establishing or repealing such laws. But in Ghana, it's still a crime. Whoever attempts to commit suicide shall be guilty of misdemeanor. This is our conversation on Good Afternoon, Ghana. You can send your messages and comments to Metro TV Ghana on social media, all social media platforms where we are streaming live. You can also send your messages to the WhatsApp number that will be displaying on your screen. Please do not call the number, just send your messages. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. For this conversation, my guest is a lawyer, Christian Lebrecht Lalm-Hesse, Esquire. I hope I have the name right. He's a corporate commercial lawyer. We'll also be joined by psychiatric mental health practitioner, Philip Ofori-Yentumi, I believe, all the way in the US. But first, we want to understand why suicide is criminalized in Ghana. And then we'll see where Mr. Hesse wants to go. We know that he's heading to the Supreme Court for some kind of interpretation as to the law. We want to understand the law and then go through what is happening in other jurisdictions. I know that in, for instance, Canada, it has been decriminalized. But in Ghana and in some other countries, it continues. Attempted suicide continues to be a crime. I'll take you to the video wall where we'll look at Section 57. This is Section 57 of the Criminal Offences Code 1960, Act 29. It's not there, but that's what it is. It says, whoever abets the commission of suicide by any person shall, whether or not the suicide be actually committed, be guilty of first-degree felony. Whoever attempts to commit suicide shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. Next slide. Yes, so let's attempt looking at what pertains in other jurisdictions. We know that in South Africa, as well as other African countries we'll be bringing to you, suicide remains a crime. The law and societal norms and morality generally neither favor nor support suicide, and more so the assistance given by others to such an act. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, we know that's in Kenya as well. Let's move on to the next slide where we have the table of all the countries so that we can look at, thank you. So these are the countries and this is the status. For instance, if you look at it, Ghana, Botswana, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, Tanzania, and Uganda, suicide is illegal. Physician-assisted suicide is also illegal. And voluntary euthanasia, what is popularly known as mercy killing, is also illegal. So we know that in Ghana, as is with many African countries, suicide is illegal. There's a lawyer who is trying to interrogate this. What he wants to do is to get the Supreme Court to throw some more light on it and explain and challenge the current dispensation, which is the law, Section 57 of the Criminal Offences Code that criminalizes suicide. And his main argument is the fact that it is a mental health condition. We'll take a break. When we come back, I'll sit with him and we'll also speak to psychiatric experts. Stay with us. Welcome back to Good Afternoon, Ghana. Let's now sit down and have a chat with corporate commercial lawyer Christian Lebrecht Lalm-Hesse. Good afternoon to you and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hope you're well.
I'm good.
Yes. Look, my first question to you is this belief that suicide or the attempt of it should be decriminalized. Why?
Yes. Gone are those times when the perception is that people who attempt to take their lives and finally successfully do so don't have the right to do that. And it stems from the common law perspective. And at the common law, persons like Blackstone, he was a learned jurist, who said, amongst other things, that you cannot take your own life and meet your maker prematurely, such that if you do that, your body will be stoked with a piece of wood, and you're even in death.
Pardon the interruption. I think you have to take your mask off.
Okay.
It's interrupting with the sound.
Okay,
yes,
sure.
thank you.
Okay. So that in situation where you die, that you are successful with a suicide, your body will be stoked with a piece of wood, even in death.
Which is some form of punishment.
Yes, some form of punishment. And your properties, chattels and goods be forfeited and be given to the king. The whole concept is that in legal theory and jurisprudence, and you look at the positivist theory, we have philosophers like John Austin, who said that God, who is the supreme, suits out his rules through the governed or the state. Now, in the realm, you have the subjects that form the territorial nature or theory of what a complete realm is. And that God gives life to its subjects through the governed. Now, where life has been given to you, you cannot decide to take your own life. And when you do so, the state must wield a deterrence.
Is it purely about God giving you life? The state appears to hold a strong position to life. The state has or appears to be very pro-life. You see that in conversations about abortion, and that is why in certain countries it is criminal. You look at suicide, it's also criminal. Why is the state so concerned about keeping the human alive?
Yes,
even sometimes against their will.
Yes, so that's what I'm explaining to you, that it's rooted in legal theory and jurisprudence. And so the supreme, the governed, the state, and the realm, which is the subject, that I'm just trying to explain to you, stems from that. So that where life has been given to a subject of who is entrusted in the hands of the state to control your affairs, you have that social contract with. It is the duty of the state to ensure that nobody takes his own life, such that if you do, for whatever reason, whatever pain you are going through, and you decide to take your life, you should be punished even in death to deter others, because you are not the giver of life. So that has been the concept that has run through until sometime in 1751, when Germany decided to decriminalize it. It was the first state to do so, and other Western countries followed. The last of them was Ireland, about 35 years ago. And till date, through medical literature and also World Health Organization has recognized the fact that persons who attempt suicide, it's not necessarily that the person wants to take his own life, but it is a matter of mental health priority.
And that's most of the time they're going through pain and fear. Yes,
so in Ghana, you have about 13% of the population of 31 million plus persons suffering from mental health condition. You have 3% of people suffering from chronic or severe mental health conditions, and the remainder of the 10 being mild to moderate mental health issues. If you also look at the Mental Health Act, it says that there are two categories of these persons. We have the involuntary patients and the voluntary patients. Involuntary patients are people who don't even know the condition in which they are. They don't know that they have a mental health issue. And the voluntary patients are ones who have a history or has been diagnosed with a condition of a mental health priority. Yeah.
Let's talk about the current law right now, Section 57 of the Criminal Offences Code, Act 29, which is what you want to interrogate, or you want to
57.2.
57.2. Thank you for the specificity. So this is the case where the attempt is criminalized, abetment is criminalized.
I'm not involved with that one. I'm only interested in the 57.2.
Very well. I'm making a point. I'm trying to establish a point.
Sure.
The attempt and abetment are both criminalized by the law, but the act itself is not because really once the person is dead, unlike the old dispensation which you talked about, poking the corpses as a form of punishment, there is really no punishment per our current dispensation.
The punishment is that if you attempt suicide under Section 57(2), you are liable to a misdemeanor of 3 years in prison or a fine. Yes. You understand?
But if you're successful, then nothing
if
is
you are successful,
going to happen.
And in the literature of Hamlet dilemma, to die or to live. And the question in law, or the question that was raised at the Supreme Court in India was that somebody who has the cluster in their mind, and the cluster is suicide headaches, or what we call suicide ideations. And as a result of it, the person relieves himself from his body in order to escape the pain that is sustained as a result of that. At the time the person tries to leave, if the person is not successful, then the person will be put behind the iron bars of imprisonment. But should the person succeed, then he would disengage himself from the realms of this world. So that if the person is unable to escape the nature of this world, then the person should have rights to mental health treatment and not to be subjected to the harsh conditions of criminal justice system. Which is why you are going to the
Supreme Court.
Yes.
And what do you want?
The whole thing is that if you look at Article 29(4), it says that it protects, or the Constitution enjoins to protect persons with disability or disabled persons against exploitation, regulations, and all of that. Now, extension of the definition of regulation means rules and any other laws. So that if the Constitution is saying that persons with disability, of which if you look at the Disability Act, it says that it includes mental impairment. So that if you have somebody who is mentally impaired, and yet if he attempts to take his life, that person would, instead of having access to standard treatment under Section 57 of the Mental Health Act, Act 846, that person would rather be incarcerated or be put through the criminal justice system. It's not protective of that particular person, but rather acts against that person's interest, albeit his mental health condition. And to that extent, it is inconsistent.
Let me bring in Philip Ofori-Yentumi. He's a psychiatric mental health practitioner. Good afternoon to you from Accra. Hope you're well, and thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers. And I'm doing very well here, and thanks for the invitation.
It's good to see you again. Lawyer was talking, and he used a term that thankfully you can break down for us. He talked about suicide ideation. Before I ask my question, explain this suicide ideation for us.
Okay, so that is when somebody has the thoughts of wanting to take their lives. So for someone to have such a thought, there may be factors, or there are factors. And it could be caused by so many things, right? It could be because of their mental health condition. It could be because of a stressor that they are going through. It could be because of a situation in which they find themselves. So these things can lead to someone having a mental health, a suicidal ideation. And to have the ideation is one thing, and then to have the acting or to act on it is another thing. And then when it comes to the ideation also, we have the intensity. So we have different levels of intensity, and depending on how intensified it is, then most likely they are going to act on it.
Okay. Another thing that you didn't mention was about substance abuse and medications such as antidepressants. So these are also likely causes, no, of mental health conditions which could then be linked to suicide.
And that is correct. There are certain medications that when you take it as part of their side effects includes suicidal ideations, and also substances. You know, there are certain drugs that alters your state of mind, and it can also make you suicidal.
Okay, lawyer, I'll ask you about this separately because of the issue of mens rea or criminal intent that you talk about. But Philip, what I want to understand from you is from where you sit as a mental health practitioner, do you share in lawyers' thoughts as with the matter of suicide or the attempt of it being criminalized? What we understand with research from the World Health Organization, that these are people who are going through some kind of fear and panic. And so this, even the attempt of it may be a cry for help, but instead the state sees it as a crime.
And I 100% share with lawyers' position, right? So what that law, in my understanding, what that law is saying is that if you go to do it, make sure you do it right and don't fail.
That's not good.
Right, I want to put it very simple so that people can really understand the intensity of that law. Oh, if you go to commit suicide or if you go to attempt taking your life, make sure that you don't fail, because if you do, you're going to be in with someone who has committed different crimes, and then you're going to come back possibly worse, right? So that is the import of the law to me. So I think that decriminalizing that is a step in the right direction, and it's time that the country takes that decision.
Very well, but isn't it also fair? This is a state, or the state is managing people, okay? People need to work, people need to do things to keep, you know, that social contract alive and burning. Is it not fair for the state to ensure that the right to life is not put in individual hands? And so laws like this will ensure that laws like suicide here, in some cases abortion, will ensure that people don't just go about taking lives just because they feel like it.
Right, and it's not an issue of just feeling like it. And you also made a point about the social contracts. People have to work and people have to live, and you know, all of that. I agree. But then if you lock me up, what is my contribution towards society? If I have these challenges, whether it's through a stressor, a side effect from a medication, a drug use or abuse, or for any reason I feel suicidal, and you're going to lock me up for it, you are now spending more on me. There's also been the discussion about decongesting our prison system. So how do we decongest a prison system? By putting people who need help, and that is the key word, or key phrase, who needs help into the prison system. We just congesting it the more. And you know, when we talk about people, mental health, right? And now let me talk about some of the illnesses, mental illnesses, which contributes to high suicidal tendencies. Mm-hmm. So we have with schizophrenia, right? So someone with schizophrenia coupled with hallucinations, it could be auditory or visual. So if somebody is hearing voices, which is telling him or her to take their lives because they are not worth it, because they are useless, because they don't contribute to society. And these voices are so intense and commanding. And they tend to act on that voice. And you put them in prison. My question is, what are you seeking to achieve? Instead of giving them a mental health treatment where they can really be treated for that condition, and then that voices will go away or reduce the intensity, and then they don't have to act on that thought again, right? The other one is someone with bipolar disorder, especially the manic phase. So during that point, for some people, as part of their symptoms, comes with suicidal tendencies. And people with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia accounts for the higher number of people who are successful with suicidal attempts, right? Because their means are lethal. And also talking about suicide, men are more successful than women. You know, what men can do, women can do, but in this case, but, you know, women attempt more of suicide than men, but men are more successful.
Why is that? Can I just butt in there to understand why? Why are men more successful with suicide, even though women, you say, attempt more than men?
Right. Because men tend to use more lethal means, right? So men are more brutal. When it comes to emotions and all of that, women feels differently than men. Women are more empathetic, so though they harming themselves, their means of doing it, the thought process that they go through and all of that is more of that of men. For a man, he thinks about it, he acts on it, and he goes for the worst route possible or the most effective route possible. So in this case, as the law is at this point, then it's trying to say that, oh, everybody should be like the man. If you're going to do it right.
Essentially for you, that's what the law is saying. I want you to explain to me, like a 9-year-old, really, where are all these mental health illnesses coming from, and how do they manifest such that you see that the people who suffer from them are really thinking about taking their own lives? It's like this, they've totally disconnected from the society.
Okay, so for a 9-year-old, let's say we have the genetics, and then we have the environment. So I was trying to think about the 9-year-old. So we have it where the family from which you are from, right? So I'm dark-skinned because my family is all dark, right? So I get that from my family. Hence, you may have a mental health condition because it runs in your family. Some people have hypertension because it runs in their family. Okay, so you may have it from your family. That's the genetics part. The environmental part, where I grew up, the people I was exposed to, trauma that I've been through, all of that can also affect me mentally. So if you look at people with borderline personality disorder, this group has, in most cases, trauma, right, in their past. And they do more of self-harming. So in reference, you can infer that the self-harming activity is a suicidal attempt. So if someone is self-harming because of borderline, which there are other explanations to it, but if someone is self-harming because they have borderline, and you're going to imprison such a person, I think it's way far-fetched. It's not healthy for the individual, for the community, or for anyone else.
Okay, let me bring lawyer Lalm-Hesse into the conversation at this point. Lawyer, for you, your argument is that these people lack what you lawyers call the mens rea, the criminal intent. Yes. Explain that to us.
Yeah, so in a criminal setting, or for a criminal offense to be pronounced to have sufficed, you need the mens rea, the actus rea to equate to a criminal offense. The mens rea is the intention. The actus reus is the surrounding matters, the circumstantial things, the steps that you took in order to coincide with the intention, and then we say that a certain crime has occasioned. So that you realize that in every criminal definition under the Act, you realize that the lawyers would always look out for the elements that establish that particular offense. So the lawyer will be looking out for, did my client or has prosecution been able to establish the intention part?
Pardon my interruption, but thanks for the education. But really what I wanted you to speak to was the missing mental element in the case of suicide. Yes.
So, I mean, that was just to educate because you asked. But importantly, the mens rea under Section 18 and connecting, Section 18 deals with the definition for inchoate offenses, particularly to attempted suicide. And to that...
This is of Act 29.
Yes, Act 29. To that, because an inchoate offense is an uncompleted criminal offense, so that for attempted suicide, you only need intention to establish the inchoate offense. You don't need the actus reus.
Because it's the crime or the criminal act is yet to happen. It hasn't happened.
Yes.
But if somebody is thinking about suicide, somebody who is depressed, they are thinking about it.
Yes,
and they are planning to take something or to hang themselves. So they are thinking about it. So wouldn't you say the intention is there?
Yes, so the intention. But the argument is that that person is a mental health, because it's a mental health issue, it vitiates the intention. And where the intention is vitiated, then you cannot stricto sensu say that that person has occasioned that offense. And to that extent, there is no offense committed.
So the argument is that they are not in the right state of mind, or they were not in the right state of mind.
Because it's a mental health issue.
What about, so we can argue that for people who suffer depression, schizophrenia, blah, 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 but what about somebody who is abusing substances or is taking antidepressants?
Yeah, if you look at my statement of case, it exemplifies all of them. And
so those people are exempt?
They are all part, not
okay.
exempt. So different drugs that gives side effects, antidepressants, and all of that, or certain treatments and all of that. So this person entered into a treatment facility with a certain condition, looking all normal, everything sane, and probably 2-3 weeks into the treatment, because of the pain that the person goes through on the treatment table and all of that, that person's attitude begins to change. And surprisingly, family members would go like, oh, I mean, but he went in so strong, he went in good. But there are a lot of hormonal things going up and down the person. And within that period of time, the mental state of the person begins to change. Now, as of the time the person went in there, he was very sane. But as it develops, that person would now be termed under the Mental Health Act as an involuntary patient. So that person who hitherto did not have a history of mental health problem, but as a result of a certain treatment, as a result of what the person is going through, now begins to concept suicide ideations, which probably could lead the person to attempt suicide. And we are saying that when such a person, when somebody like that, something happens to that person needs treatment under Section 57 of the Mental Health Act. But that person does not need incarceration. And you realize that if you also look at Article 17, it deals with discrimination. And the point is that you should not discriminate against persons differently. And it gives groups or categories of persons, color, creed, all of those things. Now, by what we call use just generis, we extend that grouping to mean that somebody or persons in that are disabled persons, so that as already submitted by me, that a disabled person under the Disability Act also includes persons with a mental impairment. Now, such a person attempts to commit suicide, and instead of requiring standard treatment, that person will now be put before or to go through the criminal justice system. And that alone is discriminatory on that person, because Lord Diplock, a learned jurist, indicated that persons who attempt suicide or persons in that nature are suffering from an internal disease, and that internal disease is not manifestly known. If you also look at what Section 55 says, it says that their rights need to be protected and not be discriminated against, because the internal disease that they manifest is not physical enough that you could say that this person is suffering from malaria or from typhoid fever, but it is a disease internally to the person, and it is only a standard of treatment that will assist the person.
Okay, what I find interesting with the bit of background that we tried to give was that you'd see that European countries appear to be repealing it or abolishing the criminalization of suicide. And I'm trying to draw a colonial link here, but you notice that the list of African countries, about what, 6, 7 of them, it is illegal.
Yeah.
Suicide, the attempt of it, euthanasia, assisted, whatever, they're all illegal. What's the colonial link? Because at some points in the history of Africa, Europeans had their way here with colonization. And so their laws would have influenced our laws. A lot of these laws would sort of have some kind of umbilical cord back to European laws. So what's the connection, and why are they abandoning those laws and we are not? It doesn't appear that we are. Yes,
so the important thing, just you partially answered the question. The colonial ties, we inherited most of these laws. You look at most of our acts, they are not too different from that in England and all of that. Now, the interesting thing is that England has moved away from this. And it all stems from the fact of the common law examples that I gave you and all that had panned out. Now, they recognize the fact that it is a mental health issue, and it is not necessarily one who is seeking to willfully take his life because of the exertions of life.
Why are we failing to make that recognition? Because a lot of these countries ascribe to the WHO.
Yes, and we are members of the WHO, and in fact, that even influenced the enactment of our Mental Health Act. But in order to attack Section 57.2, you need to canvass constitutional provisions to attack it. So you have Article 17, 1, 2, 3. You have Article 15 that deals with human dignity. You have Article 29, 4 that also talks about protection of disabled persons. And then you also argue out the mental health issue as against vitiating the intention and measure and all that. Because to go to the Supreme Court, you need to invoke their jurisdiction by citing constitutional provisions which are inconsistent with the particular thing. And that is the only way we can change it. Other than that, it's just Parliament who would
Let's understand the process you've started. You've already filed,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So what have you filed?
Yes, so I filed as an ordinary citizen of the land, and basically canvassing the arguments under my statement of case, just as I had already enumerated. And the Attorney General has, I think, about 14 days to respond to it. And then the date would be set.
So what are you asking the court to do?
Yes, so to the extent of the constitutional provisions I just mentioned, I'm saying that they are inconsistent with Section 57.2, and to that extent, Section 57.2 should be struck off the statute books. Do
you think that you'll be successful?
I leave that entirely to the apex court.
But do you think that you have a strong case? What arguments are you making? Some of which you've already touched on.
Yes, in my mind, these are to attack that particular provision. These are the best constitutional provisions you can bring up to attack Section 57.2, and it depends on the minds of the judges whether to strike it off or not. But that is within their remit too, given the legal reasoning, and because it is a novelty, it also beholds on them whether whatever legal maneuvering that they want to do, it is entirely up to them. So that one will not form part of my exposition.
Someone will ask, why now?
Yes, so what triggered my mind was I was interviewed some time ago on a TV3 platform, and I think on the other side was the CEO for Mental Health Authority. Mm-hmm. And on that platform, he expressed the difficulty that they had in lobbying Parliament to have it repealed, and also going through the Attorney General to have a second look at it. And so that was about a year ago. I saw the deficiency in all of the lobbying that they were doing. So just about 2 months ago, that whole thing visited my thoughts again, and I decided to put research together and then file it.
Okay, I'm going back to Philip Ofori-Yentumi on Zoom. Philip, for you as a mental health practitioner, do you find these laws insensitive, and how should Ghanaians feel about this? That they are living in a country which appears would punish them when they react to some mental health illness, when they react to pain or fear in some form of manic depression or schizophrenic attack or anxiety, whatever it is. How should people really react to the state having this position?
I don't want to pitch the people against the state, but I think it's very insensitive. I think it's on the part of the state to have that against any individual. I think it's come of age where we move beyond some of these colonial laws and impositions that have been on us for years to where we really deal with the needs of the people on the ground. We already have a challenging situation with our mental health institutions. So to even criminalize this, coupled with the stigma attached to mental health, then you just make it worse for anyone to even open up a seek treatment. So let's say if I attempt suicide, and then, I'm not successful, and I want to seek help. Oh man, I made a mistake. Now I know what I did was wrong. I want to seek help. How do I open up to go and seek help, knowing that if someone is to find out, I might end up in jail? So this just is more difficult for someone to even seek help, right? And as lawyer also mentioned, this is something that the Mental Health Authority has been pushing for some years now. And I do remember Dr. Akwesi Osei and the team met with Haruna Idrisu, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, the minority leader in Parliament. And he mentioned that he did not have that understanding of how the law impacts the people. Hence, he was going to push or help push for it to be decriminalized. And we had hoped that by a year or two on, we would have seen some light at the end of the day. But unfortunately, I guess there's some challenges for which it's not happened yet. So I'm glad that lawyer has taken it on, taken a different dimension. And I want to say that he has the support of the people in the mental health fraternity, because this is something that is very challenging for us to deal with. But let me also touch something real quick, if you don't mind.
I just wanted to make an intervention. In my research, I found that not every mental health practitioner agrees with this position. Some of them actually believe and agree that they should be criminalized. We should keep the status quo.
You may be right. You may be right, and having 100% in anything is near impossible. But I would say most. I would say most mental health practitioners. Because for those who disagree, I'm yet to hear their arguments, and therefore I cannot really speak to it. But I can see how. Right?
The argument comes back to the right to take life. That right should be exclusively given to God or the state itself.
Okay. If that is the argument, then those who are successful are the ones to be punished because they actually took it. Me attempted, and you as a practitioner also knowing very well the conditions or the situations that will lead to someone attempting. And if you have to punish them and incarcerate them for the attempt, knowing that they might have a mental health condition, especially it being schizophrenic, bipolar, borderline personality, depression, anxiety, or anything of such, you punishing them and putting them in jail, instead of giving them treatment, what do we seek to achieve? And what I was going to touch on is when lawyer talked about hormonal changes, right?
Yeah.
So let's look at a female, and I've had too many patients like that also. A female during their menstrual period, which affect their hormonal balance, and then start to have schizophrenic.
Very true.
Sorry?
I said very true.
Exactly. So during that part of that time of the month, due to their hormonal changes, they have a psychotic attack, which leads to suicidal attempt. Then they get incarcerated. I think that is very harsh. Let's also look at someone who had a child, right? Postpartum blues, postpartum depression, or postpartum psychosis. And then you go imprison that mother for having postpartum psychosis due to the hormonal changes that they've had from having the baby. And we also have a system that even cannot really support those kids. If even we did, should we take away the mother for having something that they had no control over, and then incarcerate them and expose the child to the system, where we also know about so many things that happens to children who go through the system? And that is why I cannot see any, for want of better words, any wisdom in imprisoning people who attempt suicide.
Because for you, that exacerbates the situation, their mental illness. What I want you to do, from where you sit as a practitioner, what then will be the appeal? I know there's been a lot of talk shop. This is not the first time this has come up. But what appeal would you then make in line with what lawyer is doing to get the law repealed, or to get a different approach, a more sensitive approach?
So clearly, so this is not the first time, but I believe that for something to change, sometimes a lot of effort goes into it, and different approaches has to be put on the table, either one after the other or sometimes at the same time. So now that lawyer is pushing this through the court system, I think it's time for the Mental Health Authority to also push it again through Parliament, and then we can have both going on at the same time. The other thing also is for the public to be involved in this conversation. Metro TV is a bit different, so you grab on it, you jump on it immediately, you're doing the right thing. Some media houses will not talk about this conversation. It's mental health, let's leave it, right? So let's have the media involved, get on this. As we educate the public, everybody starts to talk about it. Then it may have some impact on Parliament or the legal system, and then we may be able to see some change.
Philip, now, let me just interrupt. Pardon my rudeness for interrupting, but I've just been alerted that somebody has called into our studio saying that he's having suicidal thoughts. He's watching this show and he believes that this show speaks to him. He's having suicidal thoughts. What you would term as what? Suicide ideation. We are trying to connect with him. We need to hide his identity. We don't want to put him in any kind of trouble, but it's an SOS call that is coming in. So at some point, I will ask or entreat that you have a word with him, you speak to him. But sorry, carry on with your, please carry on with your point.
Okay, so I was talking about, all of us getting on board. The louder the cry gets, the higher the tendency for someone to really listen to us and have these changes. If you're sitting on the fence and think that this does not affect me, let me humbly present to you that this is not exclusive to any class, race, gender, or social status, nothing. Anyone at all can be a victim. I've seen a Roman father before. I've taken care of someone whose car rim was more expensive than my whole car that I drove, right? So, in terms of wealth, he was up there. We've seen people who are homeless, we've seen people. So it is not discriminatory. Anything, something can happen to you, which will make you tilt towards where you have suicidal ideations and most likely attempt it.
Is what you are trying, another rude interruption, but is what you are trying to say that we all have a bit of cuckoo in us, which has not been triggered?
Yes, and you just need that stress, that trigger, for which it will tip you to the other side. So we are all vulnerable. Hence, the issue of mental health goes beyond someone who is at Anchor 4 or someone who is at Kakra Psychiatric Hospital. We have to really keep promoting, talking about it to reduce the stigma that is attached to it, if not take it off, right? Take off the stigma that is attached to it so that people can really freely talk about it and then seek help. Let me ask this rhetorical question, right? Let's say the producer of this show, or no, actually, let me use it, Francisca, just for example. If you are to check into Kakra Psychiatric Hospital right now, and then someone sees you coming out of Kakra Psychiatric Hospital without cameras. If they see the cameras, they will think, oh, you went there to cover a story. But without, you come out. What will be the headline? What do you think will be the headline?
They will say something that a journalist has gone crazy and is visiting the Accra Psychiatric Hospital.
And probably a program that you had and you were probably had on a guest because you wanted the fact out of them. They will even attribute your visit to Accra Psychiatric Hospital to that program. Oh, so that is why she was acting like that on that show. But really had nothing to do with it, right? So let's reduce the stigma attached to it so that if somebody needs help, they can really seek it. If we continue to criminalize this, then it goes to really fuel the stigma that is already attached to it to be evil, to be spiritual, to be criminal, and all of that. So why would I open up to someone who thinks that I am either possessed or I'm a criminal? That is why I'm saying the system is not allowing us to really talk about it or seek help.
Okay. What I'm going to do, and I like that you make a call on the individual level that we shouldn't stigmatize and ostracize and treat people differently, but a lot of this kind of behavior is ingrained in our culture. What I want us to do right now is I'll take a bit of messages, and then we'll try and connect with the gentleman who made the SOS call. We really want to give him some time. So. As my producers try to connect to him, let me read these messages. Stephen Nate from Sunyane says, does the Constitution of Ghana support euthanasia? Another message, Nana Yasewa says, I share in Lawyer Hesse's cause to decriminalizing attempted suicide in Ghana. These persons are already depressed, and a depressed mind wouldn't think twice about any action he or she is going to take, including suicide. In my opinion, such people should be handed over to professionals like the psychologists who can help them. Okay, so my attention has been drawn to the fact that we have the gentleman or the person who says he's having suicidal thoughts connected with us. Good afternoon to you. Tell us what's on your mind.
Good afternoon.
Hello?
Yeah, good afternoon, madam. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello?
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Hello, is anyone there?
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Okay, okay. If you can hear him, if you can hear him,
can you hear me?
I don't know, maybe we can fix something because I can't hear him.
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Talk to me.
Yeah. Yeah, please, and I send you a message.
Come again?
Yeah, I sent you a message.
Yes. Tell us
Hello?
what's going on with you. I'm listening to you. Talk to me.
All right. Okay. Like the message contains something that I'm going through right now.
What are you going through?
Yeah, the message containing something I'm going through right now, then what is worrying me is not okay at all.
Do you mind telling me what you're going through?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
listening.
I'm tired of being in marriage right now. My wife is worrying me. Do you understand me?
Say that again.
Yeah, I'm saying that my wife is worrying me.
Your wife is worrying you. What is she doing?
The life that she's living with me is not okay. She don't respect. She talks to me anyhow. She insults me in front of my kids, in front of my tenants. She goes out at any time and spends days after days and coming at each and every time. I have complained this to her mom that she hasn't done anything about it. As I'm talking with you right now, I give her chop money each and every week. Each and every week, every Monday, I give her money 500 Ghana to take care for only 3 kids. For about 2 years now, I have never had sex with her, never eat her food, or even talk to her. And as I'm talking with you right now, sister, I have grown up to like almost 50 years. It's left with like 3 or 4 years, I'll be 50 years.
How is all of this making you feel?
Now, I need a woman that is going to cook for me after I come back from work. I have to eat quality food because me keep on eating outside food will give me a problem sometime to come.
Hello, sir. I want to understand how this is making you feel. How do you feel?
Yeah, sister, at times I feel like taking my life off. I feel like driving my car and even putting into a fence wall or a building. I feel like buying a petrol.
Thankfully, I have a psychiatric mental officer, a health officer with us, or practitioner with us, Philip. Philip, what do you do? What do we do in this situation? He's told us what is wrong and the thoughts that he's entertaining. What do you say to him?
I would say that he should reach out to a professional. They will benefit from marriage counseling. If even the wife is not interested at this point, at least he can initiate it, right? And then through marriage counseling, they'll be able to get somewhere with it. There is no worth it for anyone to stay in marriage and take their life as a result. It's not worth it. I do see where he's coming from. I can understand the pain he's going through. But I would say that, my brother, there is help out there. So let's provide you with some help. If you don't mind providing the region you're in, I can give you the number for the helpline in that region.
Please do, because people are asking for your number as well from the messages I'm getting.
Oh, hello.
Yes, Philip, carry on. Philip.
Okay. I've sent the helpline numbers to the producer, and he can help by putting it either on the screen or something. But if he's to be able to share his region, I can read it out, the helpline number out to him, so that he can call them immediately and then arrange for some immediate help.
Okay, are you able to quickly do that before I wrap up, sir? Okay, I don't think so. What I want us to do is we're going to move to social media to have this conversation, to put the helpline there and also respond to some of these issues. Sir, please don't do anything. As he said, seek help. We're going to put some numbers on our social media that you can call to get help. But this is the conversation here on Good Afternoon, Ghana. I'll quickly come back to the studio for final words in 20 seconds, Counsel.
Sure. It is a novelty, and it is the greatest call that we can put out there in the legal sense. We encourage all persons to be mindful of the fact that it is just a click away in your mind by a stress pattern, and you can be there.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Francisca Kakra Forson. Unfortunately, we cannot continue because we ran out of time, and we had to not disclose the identity of the caller just to protect him as well. We'll put the rest of the information on social media, Metro TV Ghana. You can go there and get all the help that you want. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Metro TV, insightful and inspiring moments.